What the fuck is happening right now? Oh, isn't this number one? I like going down the pond chasing bluegills, the dummy guys.
And welcome to Chumming Up, the fishing, spearfishing and ocean adventure podcast that fishes for everything except compliments. We don't care about your opinion, right, Leewald?
Nah. Stuff them if they don't like it and get rooted.
That's not even true, but it sounds cool. If you do like the podcast, make sure to give us a review on your little podcasting platform because, we love the feedback.
We need that endorphin kick.
Yeah, that's it. I am Squirly, and that other voice you heard is the co-host, Leewald Mitchell. How you going, big horse?
Yeah, going good.
Yeah, dusted yourself off of a couple quiet days fishing and confidence back?
Oh, confidence ain't back yet. I don't know what's better. The last 2 days are done. One day went donuts, and then yesterday we dropped a slam, dropped a blue, a black, and a sail, all three. So just getting worse.
Like you said, anyone can catch them. Takes skill to miss all of them.
All three, yeah. Usually you get one by accident or something, but nah.
Yeah. So I think we better introduce our guest today, don't you reckon?
Yep, definitely.
Yeah, because this guy is responsible for more people eating sword than Ron Jeremy. Welcome to the podcast, Ben Knaggs.
Thanks, mate. How you going? That's the best intro I've ever had.
Is it the first time you've been compared to Ron Jeremy, though? That's what everyone wants to know.
I did once have a good mo going. I
thought you were going somewhere else than Mo. There you go. How's everything going? You are the manager of the Exmouth Game Fishing Club. We're right in the lead up to our biggest tournament, Gamex.
Yep.
Is it all just busy?
It's always busy. Gamex is just a hungry beast. It takes a bit of organisation. It's sort of peaks now, but it starts straight after the last Gamex finished. Being a big tourney, it's all looking good though for this year. Numbers are a little bit down because of COVID and other bits and pieces like that have gone on, but we're still looking like we're going to have a pretty good comp. So getting excited for it. Now all the actual organisation's done and you can get into the fun stuff and crack a few beers.
Yeah. Is it like that, just excitement when it's on, or is it still draining? A bit of both.
Yeah, it takes a lot of effort to get going. We're sort of lucky to have some pretty handy volunteers and all that kind of thing that help us out. But, it's just once all the stress of like, the prize is going to rock up, and all that sort of shit gets out of the way and we can just get down, the lads are here and have a laugh and, it's good fun.
That's good. Do you know how many boats you've got in this year?
I think we're going to be about sort of 40 maximum, probably in the high 30s, I reckon that's what it's going to be. So I think last year we had 52 entered, but then COVID hit sort of right at the start of it.
Yeah, that was
we had a few.
peak.
It was so bad. But so there was about, I think we ended up with 47 or 48 fishing last year because a few pulled out last minute.
Yeah.
So we're sort of 10-ish down on last year. Which in that 10, there's a few well-known teams or guys that aren't going to be there, which is going to mix things up a little bit interesting this year. So
I think it makes it interesting. I'm interested to see how the Calcutta's going to go because I don't think you've got those couple favourite boats that are going to take the money. So I think it could go either way of a lot of people backing themselves in this year.
Well, you're the auctioneer, so you're telling me already I'm setting my standards lower.
Yeah. Well, I think you set your standards low when you got me as the auctioneer.
Nah, you did a bloody good job last year.
Well,
so.
I know Josh won't be going under the radar this year because the boat auction, what is it, $200 silent auction. If you go for under 200, you don't go into the verbal auction.
We've changed it a little bit this year, so it was sort of just the way it was set up. I actually didn't find out about that with Josh until not very long ago at all. So
you
I
can move the mic with you if you like.
So last year, Josh didn't go to auction, which was great for him. He got it for bugger all. So that's really good. I think he will this year because he's defending champion and all the rest of it.
I think so.
Yeah, there's a couple of little changes to that silent auction to try and make it a little bit easier because you end up with two things. Either you've got way too many boats to be auctioned, so it takes forever and everyone's sort of over it by the time it's finished. So you really want those, that top group that everyone's think is going to win, or you end up, there's not enough money in the pot and it's not, as good a thing. So this year that'll change a little bit. Just one of the tiny little tweaks that happens each year to how we do things.
Yeah, okay, that'll be interesting.
Yeah.
I think a real key part to the boat auction is, I think John Prince, I talked to him yesterday, is trying to make it up in time. He might be a day late or something. If he can make it with Jan Prince and someone gives her a couple of champagnes, it'll be twice as lucrative as it should be.
Key. I think Jan's won it before and spent more than she actually got back.
I've seen John and Jan bidding against each other on opposite sides of the room because there was like 300 people there and they didn't realise it was them against each other over their own boat.
I'm pretty sure I've seen Jan bidding against Jan as well.
Perfect.
I think the easiest part of that will be getting Jan a fucking couple champagne.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
I did see, I think the Exmouth Game Fishing Club shared yesterday. I didn't read the full story, but the international...
Yeah, so the International Game Fishing Association, IGFA, which is obviously the governing body for worldwide for clubs and associations and stuff like that. They've got a new president and he's been here before. I'm not 100% if it was during Gamex or he just came here for a visit. Before he was the president, this guy, I can't pronounce his last name, so I won't even try. He's been around IGFA for quite a long time.
Just call him old mate.
Yeah, old mate.
It works for everyone.
Old mate Prez, yeah.
Old mate.
He has been, within IGFA for quite a while in their conservation realm. And he's the new president that's come on board. And Marlin Magazine did an interview with him just saying, what are you hoping to achieve? All that sort of stuff, like a bit of a press release thing about the new pres. And just one of those, nice little fluff questions you ask. Where's your favourite place to fish? And he said, look, I've fished all over the world. I've been really lucky, blah, blah, blah. But one place that stands out is Exmouth, for the variety of fishing, great people, nice place, all that sort of thing. So for someone like that who's fished, everywhere all over the shop and has been, obviously right involved in the whole sort of industry, it's a pretty big thing for Exie. I think I've been not anywhere near that amount of fishing experience, but I've been lucky because my background's been in fishing magazines and I've travelled all around, particularly Australia and a fair bit overseas as well, fishing. And this is the place. I mean, I moved here because of it. I still think we don't really realise how good we have it. Like this for a whole bunch of reasons. The fishing in Exmouth, particularly the game and sport fishing side of things. It's properly world class.
Yeah,
and we just sort of take it as and kites and blues and this and that and whatever. Like, mate, you don't.
Yeah. Like it's just a small thing to go out and drop a slam, like we do it every day.
Yeah.
Do you know how many people would die to drop a slam like us?
Probably no one.
No one. Literally no one. So where's Gamex sit as a comp? Like being from here, it's like, is it as world renowned or is it big in Australia?
I think it is. It's one of those comps that, I mean, I probably heard about Gamex. I'm from Adelaide originally, and was a nutcase fisho growing up and all that sort of thing. I reckon I'd heard about Gamex before I'd even heard about Exmouth.
Yeah.
So, but it's one of those things you talk to guys, particularly East Coast guys, and they've all heard of it and want to fish it and blah blah blah. The limiting factor is getting over here and bringing your own boat or whatever, it's across the bloody continent. And then you're looking at internationally, it's well regarded, but we're around the other side of the world for most of the guys that are going to come from the States or, there's the Japanese and those guys that are sort of into stuff. They don't seem to be, big time game fishers, a lot of those guys. They're more interested in GTs and things like that we've got here. But it certainly punches way above its weight as a comp. It's the biggest fishing event in WA as far as prestige and pot and all the rest of it goes. There are actually some bigger comps people-wise, it happened down. I think Rockingham had like a squid comp that was just like, I was looking at the numbers going, what?
Yeah.
Rockingham's full of squids.
Don't have to leave the beach.
So yeah, numbers wise, we're limited by a bunch of things of accommodation and where we are. But the comp itself, yeah, it's definitely sort of up there, and it's kind of it's been the plan for a long time. As one of the things I'm really keen to sort of crack into while I'm around the club is to elevate it to be definitely the biggest comp in Australia or the most prestigious, and then get into that sort of world class event sort of thing, which is, like I said, it's been building to that for quite a long time. There's been some people that have been involved in the event. Jenny Gates is a good one. She did a lot of stuff for a lot of years to really push it, and I sort of took over a little bit from her. She's still around the place to help, but some of those things to just get it into that next realm. It's going to take a little bit of some more sponsors and some more work and everything, but I reckon we'll get there eventually.
Yep.
From my point of view, I definitely believe what you're saying there. It's got a lot going on. Like, it's for anyone who doesn't know, Gamex, you fish for 6 days straight. There's rigging nights before, presentation night after. There's a party night midway through where lines out early, which is awesome. Get on the piss. And there's 27 sections in there that you can fish for, so it's not just a one-trick pony, but they all accumulate back together into two major sections. One is billfish overall, and the other one is capture overall, and capture includes all registered forms of game fish like over the 6 days. Like teams that have won it in the past, you catch 15 different species of game fish on all your line classes, so it's just unbelievable variety. And the hardest bit seems to be you can't fish both sections that easily. So it's amazing you can fish 6 days straight, sun up to sundown, and walk away wishing you could fish more. And that's what I love about it. But I think what it particularly has is, like Ben's saying, as an event, it is easily WA's best fishing event, and it's a wicked event. But then as our location is, we have the best fishing in the world that I've experienced. It's not just smoke and mirrors and pom-poms saying, look at this event. The fish are there. So why wouldn't you want to fish it?
And that's the thing, the way it's set up, like you said, you've got like two halves to it. And it is, at its essence, it's a line class tournament, which is a little bit different. Like there's not many of that. Line class fishing has gone by the wayside a little bit in recent times with braid and all that kind of thing coming in that just sort of changes the way we fish day to day, or most sort of punters do. But Gamex has maintained that, and because of that, and because of its sections, and because what Exmouth is, it's a really good showcase of the fishing we got here, because you're going to have, there'll be big marlin caught, big blues and everything down to little stuff on 1 kilo, but that gives you all these different species. I was going through the GFAA annual the other day, just because I always, I'm putting together fluff pieces and whatever, talking about Gamex, trying to promote it. And we're always saying, there's this amount of species you can catch and different whatever. You actually go through the registered game fish in Australia. I can't remember what the number was, but it was like, I think there's 58 or something along those lines total. There's like 51 of them you can catch here. And there's a few in there like, blue sharks and things that you probably wouldn't want to anyway. But you're not going to see like, Australian salmon we've caught them here. They've been caught here, but you wouldn't go chase one,
Yeah.
But there's only a handful of those oddball ones, and the rest are all like dead. If you get 6 days, you can go and catch those fish. You know? And that's what we end up with. The end, you go like, look at this list of fish. There's nowhere else that comes close, man. So it's, again, we're pretty spoiled with the joint, but I think Gamex, sort of the way that it's evolved and set up and how it is now, takes a little bit to get your head around how to fish it and how to win it. But it's, shows a hell of a lot of diversity, and it sort of really gives everyone a chance to do all sorts of different stuff while they're here. So I think it's a cool comp.
Yeah, and I think with those, like you're saying, with those multiple species that can be fished for some unbegotten reason, we have them in XXL size too.
Yep.
Every Gamex I've been involved in going down to, there hasn't been one where I haven't seen multiple world records claimed in the game rec.
Yep.
We're talking world records, like let alone the amount of state and Australian records that get claimed every time the tournament's on.
Yeah. Well, last year's Matt Gates from Tackle World Exmouth got a golden on, forgive me if I'm wrong, but I think it was it 2? Yeah. And yeah, that's right. I was going to say 4. There was a world record that's been ratified. That's there. That was
on my
same
boat.
School. Yeah, yeah. Oh, that's right. Yeah.
I was the one driving the boat when we caught it.
So you had another fish out of that same school at the same time, which would have been a record, or just missed it on 3 or something.
Yeah, missed it by like 100 grams or something.
2 world records right there. Like, it's just, nuts. So
yeah, 10.2 on 2.
that's it, yeah. So I forgot you were fishing again too.
I was the one driving the boat. But yeah, that was a really cool capture. There's plenty of high fives and that going when that come on the boat.
sick.
Don't worry about that.
Yeah, I mean, is that your only world record you've got during Gamex? Didn't you get one with Custard?
Yeah, we got a hammerhead, 154 point something on 4.
Yep.
Yep. Maybe a couple others.
Was that in the lagoon or behind out in the...
Well, a bit of both. It took us 4.5 hours to get. So it started in, went out, and we thought, there's no chance we're getting this. And then it come back in.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, so we stayed on 150 kilo hammerhead on 4 for 4.5 hours. So yeah, we're pretty lucky. And back then it was full points for sharks and still lost it. So that was even more talented.
yeah.
yes.
That was another runner-up in Gamex?
Yeah, another one, yeah.
Yeah, standard. It pays out on the Calcutta for second, doesn't it? That might help you this year. This is your first year going for the billfish section.
Yeah. So I'm going to fish the billfish section this year. Something like I said, the tournament's 2 sections, capture and billfish, and it's hard to be really competitive in both. So you fish one or the other. And I've always wanted to try and sink my teeth into the billfish section. So have a go at that this year. So
Good to see you getting all the drops out of the way beforehand. So
Yeah.
Well, that has been brought up every day. We're like, this is how you do it.
I can see it's like, yeah, it's not funny.
yeah. So I've learned how to not catch them.
Yeah. That was one thing I was going to bring up is talking about the fish getting weighed and stuff like that. I know as a kid growing up here, we used to go down every night. It used to be at the Potshot Resort. They had the indoor cricket nets and then just watch all the fish getting weighed. You had your queenies and everything else like that, which was cool. And then there were obviously a lot more billfish getting weighed then. The clubs decided not to have a section for weighed billfish.
Yeah, we changed it. I can't actually remember if it was last year or the year before. I think it might be last year. We did have a couple of sections for weighed billfish. So it was basically heavy tackle and light tackle, heaviest marlin weight in on either. They hadn't gone off either of them for years and years because no one was really fishing it. Even we had a few years ago, Julian Pepperell, who's most guys will probably know, is a well-known marine biologist. They were doing a black marlin genetic study and we needed a small black to be necked and brought in. And nobody would do it, like just because there's a few things like you can easily put it down to like, I don't want greenies in my face. Yeah. But it's also guys like you've got to deal with it on the deck. You know, you've got to bring it. It can slow you down, all that sort of thing. So I ended up, I think Ed Lawler ended up grabbing one for that. We got that, but it was just nobody was fishing it. You know, no one's really like targeting that section, and the prizes weren't huge, but I think it was $1,000 and some bits and pieces left over. But no one was sort of doing it, and that prize was just going to waste every year. So, and then we're having other guys talking about previously the way the scoring was set up. If you came down, Real Tees are a really good example. They're coming down from Broome. They're fishing Gamex. Yeah, they want to be competitive, but in Exmouth they want to have some fun. And Ross Newton, the skipper, wants to catch blues. That's what he wants to do when he's in Exmouth.
Yep.
But he's going out there catching blues on 60 and getting little blacks coming up and catching a few of those, and they're getting bugger all points for it. And they were sort of saying that we feel like we're being, penalised for chasing blues. You know, you should be in chasing small blacks to blah, blah, blah. So what we sort of decided on doing there was, all right, let's take these billfish weighed sections get rid of those so we can free up that bit of prizes, and we'll have, I think it's been done in the past anyway, your billfish tag and release sections for light tackle, which is 1 to 10, medium is 15 and 24, and heavy, which is 37 and 60. And then that way you can do it, but it's going to be very, very hard for the team that wins the overall tag and release marlin section to win all of those as well, or even the second place. So it spreads it out a bit. It worked last year. We had, I think at least one of them went to a team that didn't really rate that well overall, but they won some cool prizes for having that section. And it's trying to just distribute it a little bit better, so you don't have the team that's killed it and won has just taken out all these other sections too. Yeah. But at the same time, we as a club, we're not saying we don't want to weigh billfishing. We want to, if someone catches a horse, particularly if it's a record, we want to see it, you know. So the change of rules was that section's gone, but you are still welcome to bring a billfish into weigh if you think it's going to be a record. So there's, in the rules, there's some minimum length figures to give you an idea. So long as, I think we initially said if it's within 10% of the record, because you can't, you don't know a lot of the time. And then that was hard, so we changed it to minimum length sort of thing. And that also gives you tables that are in the rules there to go, because there's heaps of them that are vacant, particularly the female and kids ones and stuff like that, and, spearfish and things like that we don't see all the time. Yeah. So you can weigh those in. That was sort of how we got around that. No one weighed a billfish in. That last year might have been one that was accidentally caught. Maybe it was the year before. No one weighed anything in properly last year anyway. And then the plan going forward is to bring a billfish weighed section back, but it won't be in that format. It'll probably be biggest marlin weighed over 800 pound, or the minimum, whatever we do, whatever the size is, or the minimum length, which we do in the heavy tackle tournament. And that I want to get to be almost like a side section. So you can win that by being nowhere near the leaders, but out there looking for a big girl, which you can do right from the start, or you can get a couple of days out and go, we're not going to win. Right, let's put the big gear out and just try and get a horse. Yeah. And I want to do that. I'm definitely going to do it as connected with the heavy tackle tournament in December, which has basically a pretty similar section. Yep. And jackpot that between Gamex and heavy tackle, so we can get the money up a little bit better, and then maybe look at some other things to try and make it a proper prize, like some big money in it. So full on. Yeah, and there's a few other things we're doing like that. Said you off before we started that I can't announce yet, but there'll be some stuff happening for next year. Yeah. So stay tuned for 2022. Well, there'll be some on the briefing of the presentation night for this year. It's going to be some announcements, so I'll talk to you about it again later. But to try and get some of those prizes up, and just some stuff to just get everyone involved and always give everyone a chance. I mean, you've got, because we've got 27 sections in Gamex, you've got all sorts of things that you can go and target to win a good prize, literally right up until the last hour. Within line class sections and things like that, that you're fishing through the week to rack up points, but you can always at any point go,
switch it.
Yeah, we're nowhere near it. Let's just go and target something on 6 or whatever and try and get anything, Big Mackie, whatever, and, win some stuff. So the guys that do it well, even if they don't win, they end up racking up enough of those smaller prizes to walk away with a heap of stuff, a bunch of good Shimano gear and all that kind of thing. So that's what I like about it. And I like that we can allow for that and try and get as many guys, if you're a little bit switched on, or even if you're not and just get a little bit lucky, you still got a good chance and everyone has a fun time. Rather it's, because it sucks when you go and fish a tournament and you do half well and you win nothing, whereas it's nice to.
I think you're on the right page, but like you're saying that over the years you're trying to turn Gamex into a beast. I think if you had, like you said, you can go and fish the line class sections and win beautiful telecas and stuff like that. But if you had 50 or 100 grand or something ridiculous sitting there for a blue marlin over 800 pound on the last 2 days or from the get-go, you would have guys chewing at the bit to fish that.
Yeah, and this is my personal opinions, because everything's got to go through committees and stuff like that with clubs, and there's rules through GFAA, Game Fishing Association Australia. They don't like big prize pots and whatever, but it's just about trying to communicate it all, and because it brings in their argument against these sorts of things is that it brings in the possibility of cheating and people fishing for not the right reasons and, looking after the fish and all the, sportsmanship and all that kind of stuff, which is true. I agree with.
Yep.
So they don't like these big prize pots, but I think there's ways around it. And I would like to see Gamex particularly having sections there that, as I said to you before, you win it and it's almost life-changing. You're going to get an awesome prize. There's cred there, the whole lot, and, you can do stuff for it. I mean, even if you look at guys, it's sort of a little bit there anyway, but guys like Ed Lawler or Josh won it last year or whatever, that's a big thing for their business. They can push that and, we're a reigning champion or won it this many times and whatever. If it then sort of becomes, well, we won it and this group of guys that chartered us won $100,000 a boat or whatever, that sort of thing. It's next year they're going to get guys that are,
Oh, definitely.
falling over each other to get on the boat.
Like you said, if you've done 6 days straight against a field of 50-odd boats, you're saying normally, and come out on top, you're pretty good at what you do. You're not lucky, So
Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, it's like a 2020 cricket match versus a test. A test sorts people out, whereas you can get lucky and win. And that's to have that little thing in Gamex where you can just get lucky and get a fish and win a prize.
Yeah.
But to win it overall, you got to be consistent. Most teams will have, the winner will have at least one good day, as you know. Yeah. But it's generally just trying to just don't have a bad day. That's the key,
Yeah, keep your average up.
Yeah.
And then that one day that can get you ahead if things go right.
Yeah.
I think that's it. Mainly just keeping that. I think everyone tries to catch at least a couple a day, sort of thing.
Yeah.
It is sounding exciting, like everything about Gamex. The other exciting thing is this sword comp that you've brought in for the broad bill, through the Game Fishing Club as well. Can you explain that?
Yeah, so that's another actual thing that came off Gamex. That was another section that's been there for quite a while that was hark back to when Gamex, before all the world changed with insurance and everything like that, used to have, you could fish at night, or you could, I think you nominated one night that you could fish. Was that what it was? It was before my time.
It started off, there was, it turned into you could fish nights, and then it morphed into you had to select a night, let them know.
Yeah, so you're out. Yeah.
Yeah, but there were, from when I started Gamex, which wasn't that long ago, maybe 7 or 8 years ago or something, you could start fishing at midnight, was lines in. So you still had that night time through till sunup if you wanted as well. So you could start fishing at midnight and lines out was 5 o'clock or whatever. And there was an all-nighter you could select, but then that got the all-nighter and it starts at 7 a.m. or something now. They got taken away because of insurance purposes. And
were there
also,
any crackheads that just smashed it because of...
I don't know about crackheads, but definitely the guys that didn't want to sleep and worked harder than everyone got the rewards. Well, the Karratha Major comp during FINACL, the Dampier Classic, is 4 days, all day, all night, the whole 4 days, and you only have to weigh in on the middle of it once.
Yeah.
So the guys are just like, they're nearly running like day and night shift, which works perfectly because most of the guys are that work day and night shift there anyway, where you'll have 2 guys up fishing through the night, 1 guy sleeping, and then when you got to travel in the morning, he gets up, moves. It's hardcore.
Mate, it sucks as a decky. I remember that. I was like, nah, fuck this. I'm getting $100 a day and you want me for 24 hours.
Yeah, we used to fish a snapper comp back in SA that was like that for a few years, of 4 days of just go. And I did it twice. I feel physically sick thinking about it, man. It was just same deal. You had to fish it in shifts and then, you're trying to get baits. And this is back before we all fished plastics and things like that. And just, horrid. It was sort of fun, I think. But it wasn't.
It's funny,
good.
like all the tournaments that I've been a part of, when I was younger, as they cut the hours, I'd always be like, this is bullshit. This is a fishing comp. We should be fishing. And then every single time, I don't know, I just wouldn't learn. you'd fish it and you're like, this is way better. And then now
I'm
it's on the
actually
order.
enjoying it.
It's like, let's just make it 1 hour a day.
Yeah.
And that if you can't catch a fish in that, too bad.
Yeah.
You know, it just becomes so much better without having to burn the candle.
Yeah, I think we had 1 year where we were right in the comp, and then they decided to fish for swords that night. So I went, everyone went to sleep, and it was just me. So I went the full 24 hours, and then stayed out there to start again. And we, I think we needed one billfish to tie for the lead, which still would have had us behind. But I'm on the leader with no sleep, and then I just hear the skipper just screaming at this new decky that we had at the time, and he's yelling, "What the fuck are you doing?" What is going on? Just blurry as. And I look to the side. She's got the gaff for a bill. We've tagged 24 marlin, and for some reason she just thought, "I'll grab the gaff for this one." And it was still, I can remember my head at that time just dreamy, like, what is happening? Is this real? Of course it got off and we lost the comp. So
From that one fish?
yeah, I think that might have put us tie first, which would have put us second anyway. But
Well, one thing with the all-nighter anyway, with the capture section, it eventuated almost as more a strategic position in the end than it did an actual fishing session for the night. Because if you took the all-nighter, you didn't have to bring in the fish you'd captured in, so no one knew what you caught. So everyone in the end used it as the last night of the comp, and you could weigh in 2 days worth of fish, and no one really knew where you were at, so they didn't know how to catch you or
yeah, it would have been a nightmare for like the volunteers at the club.
Yeah.
And that's so typical of, like, you know, I know you're sort of into it, but rules for comps. I haven't, you know, I've been around heaps of comps and things like that over the past, but it's only that since I've been involved with the club that I've actually been, you know, responsible for looking at rules and setting things and whatever. And you just, you know, you're trying to think of, okay, we want to do this. What's that going to affect?
Yeah.
And being fishers and stuff, and it's always going to have some other effect that you hadn't considered until you go and fish it. And I love it that guys find, like, you know, I found a tactical advantage for this. I think it's cool. You know, everyone's going to do it, but that's why these comps should always be tweaked all the time. You should be every year, okay, what are we going to do about this that we either like or want to push or want to try and, you know, steer people away? Because the way you set those rules is you're dictating what you want those guys to go and catch, you know, like, and that comes down to, you know, there's so many things. You got your GFAA regulations, you've got what, you know, your average fella that comes up and enters wants to do while he's here.
Yeah.
What sponsors want, all that sort of stuff. So it all comes into one. And you get a few, like, you know, from time to time. I know there's guys out in the club that have been involved a hell of a lot longer than I have that tell me all stories of arguments and this and that and whatever that have happened over time because people are passionate and whatever. But at the end of the day, it's, you know, it's a bunch of volunteers doing it. They don't necessarily have time to, you know, go over every last little detail on it. And this is how these sorts of things happen. And you end up with stuff like that, you know, like just things that aren't really intended or aren't fished as they're intended to be.
Yeah, that's right. And I think particularly with rules like that, when I was younger, I just wanted to fish as much as we could, you know, 25 hours a day and go hard. And if no one else liked that, well, stuff them. Now I'm older. I want to fish with my son, fish with my father still. I want everyone coming into town to fish. And I think that's where the hours you can fish, the distances and places you can fish, and the weather you can fish in, because we've got a relatively new 3 or 4 year weather allowance plan that's been tweaked quite well, I believe, makes a competition fair as it should be. Because, you know, if you can't have people fishing with kids and have fishing 24 hours a day and believe that they've got a fair chance to fish against, where you want those kids to be able to have a fair chance. So you bring it in. And the same with like weather rules and that. Oh, no, we can fish in 35 knots. Well, it's all right for you in a 60-footer. Old mate's got a 5-metre boat here, you know. So I think that's the goal that the club is having, to bring that as a fair competition is very starting to shine.
And that thing, that word fair, I mean, it's again, because we've got so many sections, so many species, so many different, if someone wants to fish in the Gulf and do this and that, and you're trying to do it across, it's easy if we're all fishing for big marlin and that's it. Yeah. But trying to like spread it out and get the scoring system working for everything, regardless of what you want to do, it's a challenge. And it's, it's been going on refining that thing for what's Gamex is like 53 years old, basically. To get down to, and it's never going to be perfect because there's always funny exceptions and things like that. And you can see it in the rules. There's little things that someone's found an advantage one year and okay, we're going to have to change that for next year to stop that,
Why'd you look at Leewald when you said that?
I'd love to find one that help me win it.
Yeah, but the sword.
Yeah,
comp-
sorry, getting back to the swordfish. Yeah. So that came out of of Gamex. There was a section there for swordfish, which was that night fishing allowed for back in the days before we knew we could catch them during the day.
Yep.
With different techniques. So that I don't know when the last time someone weighed a sword in during Gamex because it was one of those things that particularly once the night time went out. You can go and chase that section, but no one really did it until the last day or two as one of those ones that, I'm not going to win marlin section or whatever I'm doing. So I'll go and try and do that. But the scoring also didn't, it's still as it is now, broadbill and any of the marlin species are the same points.
Yeah.
So the time you got to put in to catch a sword is a lot more than you're going to, hopefully troll up a little black or something.
Yeah.
So it was just not getting fished and not claimed. So we knocked that out of Gamex to allow pull that money out or that prize into something else, but we still want a sword comp. So that sort of came from, should we do a separate swordfish comp? As in the last few years, everyone started to, particularly on the East Coast, get into deep dropping during the day and catching them flat out. And then we were looking at just doing an Exmouth comp, which would have been okay, but there's only a handful of us that really do it here.
Yep.
So decided to change that with it's the first time WAGFA, the Western Australian Game Fishing Association, have allowed for it, a competition that wasn't just a weekend or whatever. It goes for 6 months and it's anywhere in WA you want to fish. So that's been something that's really cool because we can fish it hopefully on an equal pegging out of here in Exmouth where you've got should be the better weather. The grounds are really close. You've got a whole bunch of advantages there. But the guys down south technically should have bigger fish.
Yeah.
So the way that it works is that it's there's sort of two sections, but they're combined into one. So it's either tag the most swords in that 6 months or break the standing WA all tackle record, which is technically not an all tackle record, but the biggest sword in the record sections at the moment was caught by a fella fishing with Craig White off Evolution Charters, which was 128.5, I think, or 120 something 0.5. So not a really, really big sword, but a nice fish. That was on 60 kilo. So to win this comp this year, if you break that will supersede, someone who goes out and tags 20 of them. Yep. You catch the bigger one, that supersedes it. But that weighed fish, that fish that breaks the record, two things, has to be ratified as a record. So you got to catch it IGFA legal and all that sort of thing. You can't use an electric reel or anything like that, or catch it on a long line or some bullshit.
Yeah.
And it also has to stand until the end of the comp, which is end of July. So that means that it keeps it live. So, I go out tomorrow and catch a 150 and weigh that. Some dude can peg me on the last day and peg me. That's the wrong thing.
Yes,
that's going
out of here first.
Can knock me off on the last day with
Slightly better.
Yeah. So it's got a bit of interest and stuff. We started off with just wanting it to be, just a little comp to start with the trophy and some bits and pieces. And I've had sponsors just coming out of nowhere, people having contacted just want to get involved in this, sounds cool.
Yep.
So we had I think initially I had a reel and a trophy to give away. And now I've got Simrad gear, I've got some tackle stores into whatever. So the pot's at nearly 10 grand worth stuff at the moment, and some cool stuff as well. And we've got boats entered I think we've got about 10 at the moment. There's a few guys that are going to enter because you enter any time as well. You don't have to enter right at the start. So
you But you have to enter before you catch
you
the
go.
fish.
Yeah, it's 24 hours before you get out there. So
Okay.
you got to enter. So yeah, there's a few other guys that are waiting from down south when the autumn weather starts to kick in. It's calmer.
Yep.
Get and have a crack. So as it stands, there's been one fish tagged for it. Some dickhead tagged that. Fucking not a good bloke. And yeah, so there's just one fish tagged and nothing weighed in yet. So we wait and see as we go along there. I know there was some guys out down off Jurien Bay the last few days, which I haven't heard from. So I assume they didn't get one.
Got it.
Yeah, they were telling me before the comp, like this time last year, they had one that they caught because they're still learning how to do it, like most of us. We're all just getting the idea of it. They hooked this fish, got it up. It sort of stuck its head out a bit, and they were like, "Oh, it might look like a swordfish, not really sure." And then got it up, and it's a swordfish, and they're high-fiving the whole lot, and then got it to the side of the boat, and they reckon it was about 80 kilos, something like that.
Yeah.
And we're all stoked and everything, and let's get some pics. And then something happened. They've decided whether they were going to tag it, and someone pulled on the leader or whatever, and the fish just shook and just fell off. And so they're like, "Oh, we didn't even get a photo, nothing." Like, and he's like, "We really have caught one of them, man. You have to take a photo and you got to tag it, for this comp." So that's not going to do it. But
Don't ever celebrate before gaffs in, tags in. That's it.
Get it done first.
So the tagging has to be IGFA legal as well?
Yep. So it's all you got to do that. So there's some of the things, there've been some changes to rules that have happened in the last few years that have made it a bit easier. So they've changed the rules on backing because it used to be you couldn't use braid, which is something that I've fished for blues up here. I've been here for not quite 9 years. I've been in Exmouth, and this is the only blue fishing I've done here. I specifically didn't catch a blue until I moved to Exmouth because I knew we were going to, get into it and enjoy it. When I first started fishing them up until the last few years, I like to fish some of the smaller reels. So I like 50 wide Tigers instead of 80s. It's just nicer and it's easier in a little trailer boat. I've always run them with hollow core braid. So I was using Jerry Brown before, and now I use Tasline that you can fit 1,000 meters of backing. You run Dackers and you're going to fit, I don't even know, 400 or 500.
Yeah.
And you hook that big one and you're in trouble. So that wasn't IGFA, GFA legal. Actually, I'm not 100% if it is IGFA legal even. I know it's GFAA. They changed it. I'd be surprised if IGFA haven't done it. But because of that, with sorting, makes it heaps easier because you want to run braid.
Yeah, that's
so
right.
now we can do hollow core. You can just top shot with a short bit of nylon, and then you can claim that record, and it's heaps better. So that makes it easier for comps like this.
So going on that a bit, without giving away all your secrets, you use Tiagras for sword fishing or Talikas?
Both. I don't. I like the Talikas a bit better. They're just that little bit smoother,
Yeah, and they got the higher ratio.
High ratio. You can whack a bit more drag on them as well.
Yep.
But we had been using 50 wides, so I've probably only caught 3 or 4 on Talikas now. We were using 50 wides before, and they're perfectly fine.
Yep.
I had a couple of. I haven't caught a real big one yet. My biggest is estimated 150.
Yep.
But I had a fight with one February last year, just before Gamex. It was the last day I could get out for a fish before it got really busy. And I got one solo that ended up necking that fish. It was 102. So it was not a really big sword. It was my PB at the time. But there's something about him. I don't know if I haven't caught him anywhere else, so I can't tell you for sure, but I don't know if it's here. We definitely have the current that comes down off Exmouth is shallow. We all know that. It goes down to 200 max, I think.
Yep.
So there's cooler water below that. Swords will usually... Sometimes they race right up the top. Most of the time they just sort of work their way up and they might jump or whatever, go down a bit. If you can get on them straight away, you can catch them really quick.
Yeah.
Like a lot of mowing if you get on them quick. But I think they're either coming up into that warmer water to warm up or there's more oxygen. And if you let them go back down and control the fight, then you're in for a world of hurt. And that day I was solo and I got up on the fish, got the light off, even got a tag in it. I was going to let it go. And then it went back down and it sort of started going and I was on it for, I can't remember what it was, just a couple of hours or whatever. But man, I was maxed out drag, which I I pulled off later and tested. I think it was 24 or 26 kilos I got to measure. The Tiagra 50s aren't supposed to go to that much drag.
Yeah.
You know, they can't do it.
Yeah.
But I just racked around the drag cam and going hard on this thing, and that's where they get that gladiator reputation from. You know, they go so hard if you let them.
Yeah.
And that fish was one of eventually got it up. Just obviously I'm strapped in on a harness. Harness broke right at the end there. I thought I just fell over and somehow caught the rod, and I didn't know what was going on, man. And then eventually got to the point where you're like, I don't care anymore. I've just got to end this, you know. And got on the top of the leader and just did the whole cans underneath, full and back on him, and ended up. That fish was just basically the time I got it to the side of the boat, it was dead. So I necked it, and then trying to get in the boat, and it was 100 kegger. You know, we're catching them 300 and something now, and I'm convinced there's big ones here.
Yeah, well, talking to the long lining guys of the past, Exmouths, where the biggest ones are, which is unusual. Like you said, you would think down south would be that, which I'm sure it actually is. Yeah. But, I had similar experience with sword fishing out of here. Had a day out with Matt Gates and Paul Worsling, and we caught a little one. Paul caught first up maybe 30 kegs, and I thought, is this it? Is this all they got? He just did nothing, literally swam up. Yep. And then it was my turn around, very next drop, hooked one, come straight up, unclipping the lights off the leader. So got it on the leader, so technically got the release. The fish looked to us to be about 150 kilos. Unclipped the first light, reaching for the second, went down, never seen it again for half an hour, and then the hook pulled and didn't even look like turning it. It just, I imagine they reckon they got that warming system around their brain, and that they come up, they warm up like any cold-blooded animal, and then they come to life. But I have heard same thing, Tasmania and that, or if you hook them deep originally, they don't like that, obviously, and they run hard from the get-go. But I'm yet to experience that through the few swords I've been a part of.
Yeah. No, I don't know, but I'm fairly convinced it's warmth here. I think because we all know we've got a north from south, so north running countercurrent, and I reckon that water down there is cold. And then on top, it's a big water temperature change. And you can just see they go from a lot of the time pretty dry. I have had them bolt up and jump and go nuts, a couple of times. But most of the time it's relatively sedate, and they work their way up and might stick their head out and stuff so you can see it's a sword and go down. When they warm up, suddenly the fight completely changes. They can rip drag and they're just stubborn. It's sort of like a billfish cross a tuna sometimes, the way they just sort of sit down there.
Yeah.
So,
I find them funny. They're the complete opposite to sailfish on the gantry. Is everyone for a sailfish that hasn't caught a lot is saying 50 kilo and it's 15. And then the broadbill I've seen weighed, people are like, oh, it's 30 kilo and it's 75.
Yeah.
Yeah, because they're just so solid.
They are solid. Yeah. And that's something that I've seen a couple before I'd moved to Exmouth, but never hanging on a gantry. They'd be in I've seen a couple of fish shops and stuff like that. But you look at photos of them and they're cool fish. It's not till you see one up really close. They're just fat, and I think the word is caudal peduncle, tail wrist.
Okay.
It doesn't taper in, eh? It just goes.
It's just fat, and then it's crazy. So they're just saying, we caught one, that one we tagged for the one in the comp that we actually thought that was a horse. That was, I'm trying to think how we hooked it. I think it was just sort of on, was marking around, then it started to, as it was coming up, that's right, we thought it was tiny. Actually, we didn't even think it was a sword to start with. We thought we'd seen this tiny little something going on with the rod, and thought we maybe had some bycatch, whatever, and then it started to come up, and no, it's a sword. If it's swimming up, it's probably a sword. And then as it was coming up, started to get a bit tighter on it, it's got a bit of weight. And then it stopped, come up to where that water got warm, went down again, and I was at full proper sunset, and it's just going ding, 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 straight down. And I'm oh, this is the one. This is the one I've been looking for, the 200 keg plus, and strapped in and everything. And eventually come up, and it was just hooked in the dorsal. So it was just, pulling different. So it was a bit, and then it when it came up, it was because we couldn't control it that well, obviously.
Yeah.
It's come up behind the boat and we saw it from the top. We're pulling from the dorsal, obviously. And it was just fat. It's so fat. And I'm still, thinking in my head, it's 250, it's 300, And I'm saying Brendo was with me. I'm like, yeah. Like, what do you reckon? What do you reckon? And he's like, oh, nah. And then it sort of turned over and it was, we reckon 80.
Yeah.
But it was just like so fat. I got photos and you can't tell at all in the photos. They're just round, just guts on the thing. So, I mean, there's the bait that they're chasing, squid and all that kind of thing. There's a lot of it, around. They can just cruise around and nothing's going to bother them. So they just, smash stuff.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I think that's one of the issues. I think I've done like 5 or 6 trips chasing swords. And the ones I've done at night, that's half the problem is all the squid taking the bait and those cookie cutter sharks and shit like that. So, I think we had one on the rod that we believe was a sword, and we had one that we got to the boat that was a tiny little sword with the Dixons when they were running diversity charters, just us, and we stuffed that one up completely. But like Leewald said, I think the most interesting part goes back to the longliners through the WA coast, like the stories were, and like it was sort of before anyone was recreationally chasing them, and then when we were, it was all nighttime. But the word was that out of here, they didn't just get big ones; they got lots.
Yeah,
and I think it's probably the least developed fishery or like bill fishery in WA as far as recreational.
Easily.
So I think this thing's going to make it interesting to see what does happen. Across the whole WA coast, to find out, when people start really chasing them. I don't know what you reckon, Leewald.
Oh, in my experience, I've done a couple of days and probably 50-50 on like 50% of the time catch one without really knowing a lot. What's your sort of stats there, Ben?
Yeah, oh look, we're the thing we're really trying to do now is work out if there's a season.
Yeah.
So we've mostly fished previously from like autumn, winter, start of spring because we're not blue fishing then, and you've also got, once you get to October, November, December, it's windy here, so it's bloody hard to fish for swordfish. But we've sort of been trying this last 18 months or so, just go whenever we can and see what happens. And I mean, I've been doing that lately. I think I've had me and Brendo, who I fish with a lot from Innkeeper Charters. We've had caught 2, dropped 1 out of about probably done 8 days, something like that over the last month or 2.
Yeah.
We've caught fish now in every month or quarter, or at least had bites or dropped, or definitely swordfish in every month except for November and October, I reckon. So I reckon there's resident fish here.
Yeah.
I was working on the theory that the bigger ones are this time of year, but I don't think that's true now. And then it seems to be that sort of winter, which it makes sense if you're thinking about water temp and all that, that's probably better. So if you fish those, or our sort of stats through that period is probably a fish every second trip, but averaging a bite a day. But within that, we've had a few years ago when we were struggling to work out how to catch them, we've had days of 5, 6, 7, I don't even know. I don't want to talk about it, and just not hooking them or just stuffing up or thinking they're little ones or whatever we were doing back then.
Yeah.
Our best day of actually catching them is 2 from 3.
Yeah.
And that's
awesome.
That's a good day, but it's not
awesome.
That's nothing crazy.
No.
But it's still pretty
But
good
like
on a
you said,
worldwide scale.
It's undeveloped.
Yeah.
You guys you're putting in arguably the most time into it. But, I would imagine, like you said, with blue fishing, you probably haven't done sword fishing anywhere else. So, you're still figuring that out.
And the fishery here is definitely like the first few years. So I started here, I don't know, say 8 years ago. The first time I probably went and tried to catch a swordfish and fishing at night. And like you said, it's just, mate, how many sharks can you catch? It's just horrid. I think We may have dropped one time, had a scuffed leader, that maybe, that could have been anything.
Yep.
And I kind of gave up on it after not many, probably 2, 3, 4 nights, I don't even know. And then fished it. I did a couple of drops probably, what are we now? So it must have been like 2015 or 16, something like that. And no go. And then there's a fella by the name of Chris Lee Cooper who used to work in Blue Water Tackle here. And he's now down at Two Oceans Tackle. We're sponsoring this comp as well.
Yep.
He and I fished a spot down off most of the way to Coral Bay.
Yep.
And we got a fish for him. That was, our first proper day that we really did. And that one was like 97, I think.
Yeah, okay.
And thinking how good's this? This is easy,
Well, was it off a spot that he had or was it just...
Well, it was off a spot off Navionics that looked like this. And they had caught a fish, him and his mates had caught a fish there before.
Yep.
It was only a small one. And Navionics charts being Navionics charts, it looked like this wicked edge and whatever. And we were on his boat that day and we didn't have... sound wasn't working or something or other, so we just fished off the chart and got that fish and thinking, right, well, this is the spot. Sure. There's 2 fish now off probably 2 or maybe 3 trips of fish down there.
Yep.
And I've since been back and there's nothing there. It's just the shelf, So we just got hell lucky. And look back now, you think it was the coolest thing. I can still remember that fish. It jumped out at one stage. It sort of come up. We'd seen some bites and we hooked it and then it was coming up and Chris had caught a stripe deep dropping not very long ago.
Yeah.
And we've seen this thing come up and it stuck its bill out. Chris didn't see it. I'm like, man, that was a bill. I'm pretty certain. You're still going like, can't be a swordfish. There's something in your head that's sort of like they're mythical, And then fought it a bit, didn't do a huge amount to start with, run around a little bit and started to take a bit of line as it warmed up, as we now know, and then come up and just jump sideways 10 metres from off the starboard side of the boat. And it was just this, you get these things burnt into your head, this purple glowing, epic looking fish. And it was just angry as hell. And Chris had his head down on the reel at the time and he looked up and saw it go back in and just its tail as I'm going, that's it. And he's like, it's a marlin, and just stopped, no, it's not. It's a swordfish. Are you sure? Dude, unless I'm dreaming, 100% is.
Yeah.
And then, got that fish up and it come up on the leader. And I remember saying to him, what do you want me to do? I can go hard as on the leader or I can go real easy because I got soft mouths.
Yeah. And
he's like, no, just do it. And expecting this thing to go nuts. And went to take a double wrap and it just went and just come up and look, get a gaff, quick, and just, whacked it. And then, suddenly we'd caught this swordfish and we were just, obviously pumped as. I think we had one more drop and then just went home just loving life. And then, like I said, I've been back to that spot since and there's nothing there. We're just sort of lucky and looking at all the things we did that day and you look back and go, that's just, sometimes you get a gift early when you're trying to fish a new fishery.
And you need it for everything that's come since.
Yeah. And then we thought, we're on to it to a degree.
Yep.
And then I probably went at least a year until I got another bite, So, it's just, that's how it goes. And, you're just going to, a lot of the stuff, I look back at that year that I was going out and just failing time after time. And I'm fishing stuff. That was Tassie and it was just Tassie. Victoria hadn't really come online then. They were getting them, but the way they were fishing it, I was trying to follow them. And then I'm looking at the ways guys did it in Florida, which is, famous sort of swordfish spot and wherever else. The Stanzics, those guys that pretty much invented deep dropping.
Yep.
Our fishery is completely different. So you're trying to fish it using that as a guide and, unbeknownst to you, you're doing things that just aren't going to work.
Yeah.
Because we're different here, the way the fish are behaving, the bait, the whole lot. And then it's just been a process of slowly, all right, we'll try this today. We'll do that like you do with anything. And then there's I don't mean to sound like we've discovered anything because I'm way Ross Newton from Real Teasers caught heaps of, I think he's on 17 lifetime. Gatesy caught a bunch before me. John Prince had caught one. Jason Browning, JB, who is getting them now, he's caught them sort of thing. So, but it's, you generally just building up those little bits and pieces that you learn and, sort your own fishing style out, but also work out what's going off Exmouth. So, it just took that amount of time to get to a point where we're firstly getting bit all the time and not just the occasional one, or not getting bites and it's some dirty green eye shark or something just breaks your heart. And then converting those bites, or just doing different things to we had a couple of years ago where we caught a couple of fish, but we're getting bit all the time and just not catching them and trying everything we could possibly think of to convert that. It just didn't happen. And then the following year we started catching them, and we made some little changes, but nothing really. Yeah. So I don't know if it was just a run of small fish. We were starting to think they were just tiny. That's the reason we couldn't hook them or whatever, but they feed differently here. There's all sorts of things that go on.
Me and Squirly had a bit of that. We had a day we had like 11 bites and didn't catch one.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
Nightmare.
Oh, they go out of tantrum.
Yeah. And that, like Brendo that I fished with, he's caught a couple over Kiwi. He's an expat Kiwi. And I've caught him, I think the first one they got was 200 kegs or something like that.
Oh, nice start.
Yeah. He had a day that he was same thing. They'd stitch a bait, put it down, whack, 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 whack. Wouldn't hook up, bring it up. It's all slashed up. Obviously a swordfish, put it back down there, whack, whack. So they had, whatever it was, 8, 9, 10 bites for the day, never come up solid or anything. So you can't, the bait presentation is the hard thing with the whole fishery, because you've got hundreds of meters of line out. Yep. You've got to get it down there without tangling.
Yeah.
And then it's still got to look good. It's not like, marlin trolling, you can go, it's come up and look, well, I can do a bunch of things to get that fish to bite, to convince it. With sorting, like you can muck around and do it. It's not doing much all the way down there. You can wind up, drop it down, whatever. It's probably making that slightest bit of difference. So it's kind of up to the fish, and
yeah, I suppose it's like marlin or any other fish too. Some days, no matter what you do, they're just, like that day we had the 11 bites or whatever. They might have just been slashing at it, just, reaction stuff, not actually hungry, or that's what I'm telling myself.
Yeah.
Because the excuses had to come out at the end of that.
Well, that last one we got for the comp, like I said, it was hooked in the dorsal. We got bit early on. I mean, the first drift of the day, so 8, 9 o'clock, whatever it was. And that was a bite where it's just the reel went just and it's on, and I got on it, picked the rod up. It's a swordfish, I can tell, and then it pulled the hook. Spewing.
Yeah.
And then went all the rest of the day without a bite, and just, you're going to slash your wrists and all that sort of thing. And then I'll have one more. The weather had gone to shit. We'll have one more drift. And that was that like we saw the rod tip doing this. Nothing funny.
Yeah.
And we'd moved and gone all over the place and then come back to where we'd had that bite.
Yep.
And got that fish. And it hasn't eaten the bait. The bait wasn't even touched. It's just swimming around looking at it. I reckon it was the same fish.
Yeah.
It's been hooked at the start of the day, and then, a few hours have gone past and it's going to come and it's maybe had to go to the lights or swam through it, and it's just happened to pull the leader over it and get hooked in the dorsal.
Yeah, okay.
So, you don't know what's going on down
Well,
there.
I think Princey's one was with your old boy, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And they just dropped down a bait in the middle of nowhere. And
yeah, so they... I'd been talking to them about what I'd learnt, the depth ranges of swords. So in my experience anyway, just to put it out there for listeners, swords like to live in 450 metres to 700. That's my experience. Don't take it as actual advice.
You're a hack.
So I told them that. They just drove out without sounding anything. Drove out. I think it was deeper than 700 metres where they were, like 900 or 1,000. The old boy said to John, they like to live in 450 to 700, so they dropped the line and said, I think it's at 600. They weren't even fishing the bottom.
Yep.
Popped the sinker, sat there, got him on. So that's another thing, obviously.
That's when you retire. You just don't do it again.
They came back with the attitude, because I was there when they were talking about it. Like, you guys have no fucking idea. This shit's easy. They were full like, we could do this any day we wanted.
Yeah, well, they were calling Princey Johnny one drop, and I think the worst thing he ever did was have that second drop because he didn't get one. So,
we caught a thresher after that, because there's these big eye threshers that you get as a bit of a bycatch.
Fuck, they're cool.
Oh, they're wicked looking fish. And but it's become a thing around Australia anyway, that they're amazing looking fish, but it's you think you've got a sword.
Yeah.
It's a shark. At the end of the day, it's a shark. And Princey was all happy about it. And then just a little while ago, I was talking to him and he was saying something about this thresher. I'm like, mate, that's a minor score now. Like you're back to par. You know, he wasn't very happy about that. But
see, I'm a bit different to that. I've caught one of those threshers as well, and I loved it. I love those sharks. I reckon they're cool. Like I'm a bit of a species fanatic, so I suppose. But
Hawker that I fished with got to. That must have been January. So had that one that I got in December, which was at 150. And he had a charter that day, and I'm just going, screw it, I'll go out. I said I was never going to go solo again after that first solo one. Like, the weather's good, I got to go, and hooked up, and it comes out like, it's another solid one. Like, here we go, saga number 2. But because I've learned a few things of how to deal with them, got it relatively easily after, I don't know, an hour or something or other, and rung him straight up, and it was just like, he's in there on a charter, bottom fishing, catching gold band, just like, I hate you. And then he's run straight out. I couldn't go, and he's taken his boat and his missus. And I think they had a bite or dropped a fish that day, but he went 2 consecutive bites, 2 threshers, both hooked in the same left peck or something like that. And they thought they were swords.
What a nightmare.
His missus, and particularly they stick their tail out or whatever, and they thought it was a sword. And his missus is like, oh, that's cool. And he's just like, nah. And I've been trying to tell him, like, they're a wicked fish, but guys from Vico, SA, where I'm from, would kill to catch. They do kill to catch threshers. You go and target them. It's a different species. They get those common threshers down there. Like guys will come here to do it, and he's just slowly starting to get their idea of, maybe it's not the worst thing in the world. But they hooked one as well. We think it was a thresher last year that Janelle, his missus, was on 24. That just they broke the reel. It was a 50 wide, and it just collapsed. I can't remember what happened, but it seized. Yeah, right. And we think it was a big thresher. It could have been a big sword, but they were on it for quite a while and just like couldn't move it. And then we're thinking it was just one of those monster threshers.
Do you guys use real crankies?
Nah, we're real men.
I've got one. I've got one because I'm not a real man. But just ask the question because you said the 50 wide collapsed. I had one on my 80 wide, and then this blue season, without ever servicing it, we cooked it on a blue. And it happened to be the one that we swordfished with. I think the real cranky didn't do it any favours.
Yeah.
So we didn't tell Shimano that when I got it serviced. but I think the scratches on the handle might have given it away.
I think on the podcast now you have to say allegedly.
Yeah, man. Nah, that's that's the annoying hard bit about sorting is winding the bloody bait up. Like that's just for you.
Yeah,
you're gonna have drops and wind it back up and that sort of thing. But it's just part of the deal.
Yeah, I don't like that deal. Not a fan.
Well, I see the IGFA have just done a slight rule change because obviously the guys over in America and Florida and stuff, they pretty much just fish electrics. For them. And there's this whole thing. There's a couple of sword fishing pages on Facebook that you follow. I'm addicted to with guys going on about, hand crank versus electric. They're talking about hand crank is still in like the rod's in the holder and just wind them, which is, And there's, it's become a thing. The guys over in New Zealand, which catch them, are like, anytime someone says something about hand crank, they go, it must be from New Zealand. Because those guys are, saying, well, we're real men. We actually fight these fish.
Catching them,
We don't just press the button. There's all the dudes saying, I identify as a button pusher. Or all that kind of thing. It's a good laugh, but
that's so good.
IGFA, I think, changed the rules. So you couldn't use electrics at all. And it's just recently been a change that you can use it for dropping down, winding up, but you have to have it disconnected. So it's got the plugs out and you have to manually fight.
Oh, wow.
Once the bait's set, I think it is.
Yeah.
So that's kind of cool. It allows for,
pretty cool,
just that. And they're fishing different as well. We're not fishing. They use a weight and most of them guys aren't fishing IGFA legal anyway because they've got great big 150-foot leaders and whatever because they've got a lot of current there.
Harpooning them and
all
the little bits.
Yeah. I love that some of those videos with harpoons. I love it so much. These guys that, they've got this fish on an electric. They haven't touched the rod. It's been wound up. It comes up. It's some little baby, 30 kilos. So, whack it with the highlight. Get another one in it. They're just like, full seppos just going nuts. And you just think like, man, this thing's dead anyway.
I would love to do it. I would love to have a crack at that.
Yeah, it would be sick.
Do you think we were talking about the long lining? That's hasn't happened in this area for 20 years.
Yeah, it still does happen.
Really?
Well, not as prevalent. I think it's just a little bit of prospecting.
Yep.
I suppose because the numbers are being cut back so much, there's only 2 long lining vessels in Western Australia now.
Have you ever? Sorry to interrupt. Have you ever done it? You've been.
No, I haven't. I know a lot of guys that have, and I've been given a really good insight to it. But no, not personally done. I would love to do it.
Yep.
You know, but yeah, because of that, under my knowledge, they don't fish this far north because the fishery's really good with only the 2 boats, and they want big eye and bluefin tuna, which is high money fat fish. Where up here it's all swords and big yellowfin,
which aren't as
which are
good,
cool, but they're not as Japanese market.
Yeah.
So
And you can see that. I mean, the fishing we're doing, we're getting hardly any bycatch, man. Like we've had, you get these crocodile shark things. We've had one good yellowfin, a sickle pomfret, a couple of those threshers. It's pretty much just swords. We actually caught a goblin shark one time. That was kind of cool.
Yeah, rightio.
Yeah,
Fuck, they're sick looking.
Oh man, it was and actually wasn't even. We caught it, sort of caught it, but it was. There was a second sword we caught for the day. It might have been the first time we caught 2 in a day.
Yep.
And we've had the reel just went, so no bites, nothing, just come up on it. Same thing. I've got onto it and it was like heavy, and same thing. I'm thinking this is a huge one. I'm strapping right in. And then wound it up, come up, stuck its head out, and like, oh, it's like 60 keg of sword. And that's fine. Yeah. And then we're getting it close to the boat, and you could see there was a shark behind it. You'd see this, there's just the tail of this shark. I'm like, oh man, there's a shark on it. That's a bit weird. And it's getting closer, and like, it's not letting go. Like, it's right on. We've got it out the boat, and there's this shark under the other side, and the swords come up, and it's just like ripped to shreds. All its skin was like, it starts to go that pinky, like a shark sort of gets, and just all teeth marks all over it. And we rolled it over, and it's turned out the swordfish isn't hooked at all. The goblin shark's been on it. It's gone through its mouth. The hook's come out, and the sword is lassoed with the hook around behind its dorsal. So that's what the hell was going on down there? That sword must have attacked the goblin shark. Like the goblin's eaten the bait, and either the bait was hanging out of its mouth or it just went the shark. And then I still regret to this day. We're trying to get it out and see if because we want to let the sword go and see if it would swim because it was all cut up. And pulled the goblin off, and like, oh yeah, that's because it was about that sort of size. And that's awesome. And I just chucked it, and I'm an photojournalist. I didn't take a photo. I take a photo of everything. Just threw it away, and like, it's definitely a goblin shark. That's cool. And then let the sword go. He swam fine. He was all good, and let him go. And caught a sword, high five, all that sort of thing. And then I looked it up a few days later. There's been like 2 or 3 specimens of goblin sharks in Australia ever, sort of thing. I didn't ever know.
The goblin's actually cooler.
I know. It's sort of, and then like, oh man, and there's a bunch of others, all sorts of weird sharks down there that look like it. But this was, I can't prove it, but it was 100% a goblin shark, man. It was just different to some of them got longer noses and whatever. This was for sure had the full protrudable mouth,
the rubber nose looking thing,
just crazy. So it's I still like I kind of like the bycatch, even though we get hardly any of it. Like I said, it's probably 90% swordfish. It seems to be off.
Yeah, well, there's them escalors as well, the oil fish that I've seen a few guys. Matt Gates caught one of them.
I haven't seen one of them yet, so
I had one.
Those moonfish are supposed to be here.
I want to catch one of them so bad. That's like right up the top of my list.
That's become the call now when we get like hook a fish that's obviously a small sword and like, opa, that's going to be.
I want to catch one of them. Buddy, one thing I found cool one day we caught is, I suppose it's sort of bycatch, we caught a striped marlin, but it was on the electric reel on the way back up, and it was at 300 metres on the counter, so it was pretty reliable. And so it's not total sword bycatch because it's not fishing on the bottom where we were, but it proved a lot to me because I'd heard a lot about marlin bounce diving, doing like the opposite sort of a sword. So they go down if the bait's down deep, feed, and then they come back up and they warm up again as a cold-blooded animal, like a lizard on a rock type thing. And that's been proven with satellite tagging.
Yep.
But it really definitively proved it in my mind, and now I realise when I'm marlin fishing and there's nothing, and you don't even go anywhere, you could be going a 500 metre stretch back and forth, and 2 hours later, boom, there's one, there's another one, and they potentially are bomb diving there to God knows what depths. You know, I think it's awesome.
Definitely are, man, for sure. Like they're a lot of times, you know, the way they're biting, they're eating squid. You know, they're not sort of coming up and crashing lures, and that's something that I don't end up doing it, but I want to incorporate in my marlin fishing now. Is instead of, you know, we've got the sounder set the top 50 odd meters so I can see what's going on. You know, if you run over one that you might get to come up into the gear.
Yeah.
But we've been sounding swords, particularly in the shallower grounds, and have like marked stuff deep, but halfway up, 3/4 of the way up.
Yeah.
That, it could be swords, it could be it's marlin, man. I'm certain, you know.
In that in between.
They're in there chasing that sort of stuff that's around.
Because you've obviously got a current or something there that there's bait for the swords, but there's also bait for the marlin.
The thermocline they're in or something like that.
Yep.
And I've meant to sort of do it as like, don't worry, you know, try to set your sounder for down to 200 or something and see if it is those days when we're quiet, but you're marking fish down deep.
Yeah.
We'll just stay, you know, don't go anywhere and just wait for them to come up, see if I'm... Sometimes, you know, it's not going to happen if the current's not right on the surface and it's green, shitty water. They're either not going to come up or they're not going to see your lures and stuff.
Yeah.
But it's definitely, And then we've sat there, you know, you're sorting, you're drinking these and sitting around and talking shit and whatever. And we've talked about, maybe that's the next step for our marlin fishing on those days is like, let's put a livey down, you know, stop and drop, you know.
Well, even like what we had, you know, it was we were using a belly with a skirt over the top, you know, it's not the best kept secret. Nick Stanzik's got it all over YouTube, you know. And when we're cranking that up on the electric full noise, it's just like trolling a skirt through the water. You know, you could just put sinkers in skirts or whatever, drop them down to 400 and crank them up full noise and then do it again, you know, like jigging for dogtooth tuna or whatever, you know, like, and that could be a very, if you could find them localized, it could be a very effective way.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah. If you're in a bit of a current eddy or anything, that's just having the time and the inclination to go and do it, and also turning the radio off so we're out there and not hearing guys like you just smashing blues and just...
Yeah, but the same thing, you know, like when you bluefish, like I said, you can work a patch that's 500 metres, right? Back and forth, back and forth. You're covering the same amount of water if you were in neutral and jigged up 500 metres back and forth, you know, you're covering that.
That's how they used to marlin fish back in the day, is just, you know, like shark fish and just sit there and drift, and, you know.
Yeah, we'd get some sharks, all right.
Yeah. I don't think that'd be an issue.
Yeah, but no, it's all, you know, it's just sort of stuff you learn or theories you've got. That's what makes fishing fun, is all that, you know, that's how I like to fish, is just to, you've got something you're working on or a challenge or want to try this or whatever, and I reckon 8 out of 10 times it doesn't work.
Yeah.
But this is how the sport evolves and we catch more fish and get into these sorts of things, you know?
Yeah, that's it.
Yeah, well, I think I've learnt a lot today, so I might go to the pub and try and forget it all. Is there any more that you guys want to say, anything?
Nah, I'm good. I thought it was very informative.
Come down to Gamex, even if you're not fishing.
Yeah, come
along
have a
for
look.
We've got I think the last night, the Friday, there's a beer tasting night from Pirate Life Brewing.
Ooh.
Come down and drink their beer.
Yeah, righty, eh?
Come see it, see what's going on.
I might have to, is it back on the wagon or off the wagon? I might have to go and have some of them. I don't know how that goes.
Yeah, I don't know. Is it presentation night or the night before?
No, the night before, like the Friday night, the
Last
19th.
day of fishing.
Yeah, I've never actually made it for a full presentation night. I've been there twice. Once I wasn't allowed in. That was the year I had the hook in my arm and I forgot my pass. Yeah. It was like years and years ago. And they were like, nah, you can't get in. I'm like, come on, mate. I still got the bandage on. And the other one, they kicked me out. I had a bit to drink.
Yeah, I remember that one.
So I might have to make it to the beer night. Just
come on. Anyone that wants to come along, like, you know, be happy to see you down there just for the sake of checking the joint out. It's, you know, it's cool comp and it's nice to see folks down there and have a chat. So,
sick.
So whoever wants to come on, we'll say good day.
All right. Well, cheers, Knaggsy. Thanks for chumming up.
No, thanks for having us. It's been fun having a chat about swords and stuff. I could do it forever. So
Yeah. And thanks for the shirts.
Oh, yeah.
More than anything.
So these are the Gamex new shirts, which is
model Leigh Mitchell.
Yeah, normally pick someone good looking, but do with what you got, I suppose.
Yeah, Salty Bones that does his Japanese fish prints.
I reckon they're sick.
Yeah, that's a GT we did last year. It's got a sailfish on the back, and he'll be there each night of Gamex. If you don't have to be in Gamex if you want something you want to get printed, he'll be down there to do it. I think Lethal's doing a dog tooth that you've got there. And
Yeah, I got a dog tooth in the freezer, 30 odd kilos, and really looking forward to it. I love his work.
yeah, he's guru. Keep telling everyone that GT that's on there was one we got last year, and I've got the original in my lounge room. And usually when something like that happens, you taxidermy a fish or whatever, it's sort of like the missus just hates you for a while. That's the one bit of fish artwork I've got that she really likes.
Likes it.
Yeah, she actually, because that's the thing. It's artwork, It's not just a fish that I caught in a representation of them.
Yeah, I still can't get that bit past me.
Come on, mate. We've seen you shop. You've got enough past your misses already. All right. Cheers, guys. Thanks, everyone, for listening. And we'll see you next time.
Oh my god, what the fuck is happening right now? Dolphin in the killer whale's mouth? Holy shit. Oh, this is the best day of my life, God. What?
I like going down the pond chasing bluegills and Tommy cocks.